Welcome to Letters to Louie with Abby Algiers. Welcome.
Hi, Sally.
Nice to have you back.
Thank you. Great to be back.
It's going to be a very interesting discussion today. We're in some very trying times in our country here, and we're taping this here in early March, recording this. And unfortunately, there's quite a bit of unrest in our world, and
Right.
it is affecting everyone. And this letter that your dad wrote to Louie was very reflective of what was happening during the time that he was writing it with the war, and now comparable to what's happening in our world. And it's almost, I want to say, kind of a little bit just like bone chilling
It is.
that he had such insight.
Right.
And again, last time we were here, we talked about how all of his writings really are relevant to what's happening in our world today and probably beyond that.
Exactly.
So I'm looking forward to you reading the letter, Anatomy of Depression.
Great. Thank you.
Louie, a few remembrances of a better stimulus package, the anatomy of depression. During the past 4 to 5 months, the economy of the United States and of the world has gone from perceived vigor to abysmal failure. What was, only 24 months ago, cited as the best of times, is now rapidly approaching the worst of times. Bank failures of major banks and previous stability are becoming daily occurrences. People who have saved diligently are becoming destitute, if not in actuality, at least in spirit. The specter of lack of funds haunts the prudent and spendthrifts. It is a devastating time, a time not seen for many years. In fact, a time not seen by anyone under 75 years of age. The last depression occurred during the late 1920s and most of the 1930s. That depression saw 25% unemployment, soup lines, government programs such as the WPA, IRA, and CCC camps. Those camps were the answer to improving the infrastructure of the country. When young males, predominantly white males, were employed in an army-like existence. Camps were set up in rural areas, tree farms were planted, streams were cleaned, fishes were introduced, roads were built, and the country was cleared, cleaned, and restored. In the urban areas, parks were created, neighborhoods were forested, and cities were restored. This was all an effort to conquer unemployment. Then came Pearl Harbor, sudden and committed. The world was turned upside down. The draft was instituted. The CCC camps were emptied. The training camps, boot camps, and Air Corps Depot were filled. The country was mobilized. Unemployment ended. The country was transformed. That was 1941. What about the transformation as seen by a young boy born in 1926? At home, my father was never unemployed, but had an almost indentured existence. He worked for 33 cents an hour in a general store, the Happy Cash store. It was a general store, a 3-story building on Main Street. It opened for business at 7 a.m. 6 days a week, closed at 5:30 except on Friday nights at 9. The traffic parked up and down Main Street on a diagonal grid until 1935 when parallel parking was instituted. That was a ball for a few months when the farmers tried to parallel park. But they learned, we all learned. We learned to save and reuse. We stitched baseballs with paraffin-coated string. Each night the ball was repaired and used again the next day and for the summer. And it lasted. Root beer was concocted in the kitchen. Root beer bottles fermented and exploded sometimes under the kitchen sink, often during the night. What a noise, what a scare, almost wet the bed. Knickers, long stockings, rubber garters, and resoled shoes were worn to school, worn to church, worn almost day and night. Long underwear, with flaps in the posterior and urine stains in the front, were worn day after day. Laundry was done only on Mondays. A new jacket was a hand-me-down from an older neighbor. A cap was hand-knitted. We all learned to knit. Toothpaste was baking soda. Teeth were clean but gritty. The dentist was seen only when aching was too bad to sleep. Mercurially amalgams were placed without local injections or laughing gas. It just hurt. The doctor was seen for deep cuts, fractures, sicknesses which lasted longer than a week, and sudden deaths. Sudden deaths after heavy church meals were called acute indigestion. CPR was unknown, and EKGs were unknown. In 1940, the EKG machines were finally in local hospitals. Many episodes of ruptured appendicitis occurred, not from failure to diagnose, but from failure to seek care until the belly was distended and the patient was near and profoundly dehydrated. The mortality was high. Strep throat was treated with poultices to the neck and a St. Blaise blessing in February. Subsequent valvular heart disease was the cause of death in many from age 20 to 45, initially from mitral valve disease and later from aortic valve failure. Alzheimer's disease was old age and senility and infirmity. Old age was a blessing shared by few, but people were happy, drank beer, ate beef stew and dumplings, spaghetti and meatballs, rye bread and beer on Sunday, went to fish fries on Fridays, all you could eat for 50 cents. Families were large, all worked someplace, sometimes, and laughed a lot. Somehow life went on and folks were not unhappy. Disgusted and worried, yes, but not unhappy. Church attendance was up, the clergy was active, and sexual abuse was uncommon. School attendance was sacred but short. 8 grades were the usual term of school education. The lucky went to high school, the fortunate went to college. In 1935, at the age of 9 years, I became of age and of awareness. During that summer, we lived at 266 Forest Street, and that street became a center of activity. The WPA's stimulating workforce became active in the neighborhood. Before that time, we had no curb or gutters on the street. The street was poorly surfaced. Gutters were runoff waterways, and sidewalks were gravel pathways. Under the WPA, the sidewalks and curbing were done on the northwest side of town, the old 3rd Ward. I was inquisitive and spent the free time of the summer watching the modern marvel of street construction. Men with shovels, wheelbarrows, cement mixers, trowels, and rakes dug, leveled, and reconstructed grades for the new roads, new sidewalks, and new curbs and gutters. It was fascinating to watch the progress, to speak with the laborers, and to realize the changes being made. In the fall, we walked to school on the new sidewalks. Later, my children and their children all walked on the sidewalks, which were made in 1935. In fact, the gutters were redone this past year on Forest Street during 2008. Instead of 50 men, 10 wheelbarrows, and many trowels, 6 men, 3 cement trucks, and a whacker trowel accomplished in 2 weeks what had taken a summer, 12 weeks, in 1935. The workforce of the WPA in 1935 consisted of many clerks, factory workers, and unemployed graduates. The unemployment was 20% of the total workforce. The WPA was the government stimulation package of 1935. It worked. The dignity of work was continued, and the progress was visible by weekly inspection. The success was measured by honest sweat and visible progress. It was appreciated by my friends and myself as we watched and listened and noted the smiles and sometimes the profanity of hard work. We learned during that summer that progress was and could be made, that conditions could and would be improved, that our parents were happier when work was being done, and later we, if we took the time, were aware that construction, well done, lasted. Those were good lessons, but the greatest lesson was that things could be better. As projects were accomplished, the derogatory description of the WPA was replaced by recognition of Workers' Progress Administration. It became a privilege to again be employed. The anatomy of depression changed with employment and accomplishment, with sweat and calluses, aches and pains, but with an awareness of accomplishment of the ages. It was a summer to remember. Boys of 9 or 10 years of age do observe and learn.
This and understanding how war affects and depression affects a lot of just not only your family life, but those around you and the people that are, either trying to support a family or just keep themselves,
Right.
And I think in his writing, having that be relevant to what's happening, with Ukraine, that is just amazing to me because you can picture all of that happening and hopefully they'll be able to rebuild and get control of the situation.
Right. It transcends time and place. It doesn't, it's the same kind of situation in present day.
Right.
Both for us and for the people of Ukraine. We're all experiencing it
Absolutely.
in some way.
Absolutely. And the depression part of that, how that plays into a role of, trying to find work and trying to rebuild and, be safe.
Right. And even just dealing with tough times with inflation and, it's hitting a lot of people around the world, just making do with what you have and using and reusing, just all of those lessons are.
And being
are so
grateful
good.
for what you have and not, in my mind, being grateful for what you have just on a daily occurrence, the running water and the heat,
Right.
electricity and having clothing. And it really brings you back to those necessities that I can hear in your father's words.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
Everyone learning to knit is just incredible.
Yeah.
And being resourceful.
Right.
And maybe that's the lesson coming out of this.
Right. I think it is. And just to just remember we can make use of what we have and we can still be happy. That was one thing that stuck out too. They were disgusted and worried, but they were still happy.
Right. And being able to talk about the different sides of the situation, whether you were in support of it or not support of it, but just being able to come together and, not pointing fingers and all that type of thing that's, pretty apparent today,
Right.
I think, in our world and the separation.
Right. Right. Less division, more
Yeah.
coming together.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So I think this was a great selection that you chose for today and very, again, reflective of our
Definitely.
times. So I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And to our viewers, as always, thank you for watching.